So why don't we take a look at the myth of Ur, Plato's great myth. Hillman wrote about it too in the Soul's Code, as I mentioned. And the basic concept, Ur was a Greek soldier killed along with hundreds of other men. When they came upon Ur's body, he was clearly dead from his wounds, but he had not decomposed in any way. So they tested him, they tried to bring him back to life, nothing happened. So they put him on the funeral pyres with all the other bodies. Once they lit the funeral pyres, came back to life, woke up and jumped off the fire. Everyone was amazed, of course, and they took him to the elders, and Ur told them a story that he had indeed been dead and he'd been on the other side. So, of course, they brought in the priests at the time and all the wise men, and Ur recounted the story that became known as the myth of Ur. In it, he said, on being struck down on the battlefield, he felt himself going unconscious. The next thing he knew, he became aware of his surroundings. He was on a huge meadow with hundreds of other people. He was baffled, of course. He wasn't sure what was going on. And on looking around, he saw a huge funnel coming out of the sky. And from the funnel were hordes of men and women streaming out, well-dressed, laughing, joking, dancing, singing, and all coming pouring out onto this plain, which contained hundreds and hundreds of people. On the other end of the field, there was a huge cavern-like opening, out of which, coming from the depths of the ground, coming all these bedraggled people. They were sort of singed, their clothing was burnt, they looked horrified, they looked as if they were totally shocked. And on the gates of this cavern were guards with huge spears, big, powerful guards with huge spears. Some people who attempted to emerge were not allowed to come out. They were prodded back down into the smoke and the sort of flames in the distance. Obviously, heaven and hell. So Plato is talking about reincarnation, which the Greeks had quite a belief in at the time, as did various other cultures. So, on looking around, Ur was drawn to this part of the field where there were three goddesses sitting in an elevated position. And they were known as the Fates. I can't recall the three names, but they were known collectively as the Fates. And one of them stood up before the assembled crowd and fired these little things up into the air, threw them up in the air, and they fell down all across the field. Now, one fell next to Ur, and he picked it up. It was what they call a lot. And on the lot was some sort of a number or indication of where he stood in the scheme of things. It was not his fate, it was not his destiny, but it was like a ticket, almost, to the gathering. That is where the term, your lot in life, comes from, by the way. Once he had the lot, he was then allowed to go wandering through the meadow, and across the meadow, strewn across the floor, the description sounded like the little tablets. And on each tablet was written a particular life. You could be a king, you could be a swan, a lot of them were animals. You could be an ordinary, simple man. You could choose. This is how you chose your next life. You examine the tablets. Now, the people who came out of heaven, laughing and joking, they were picking up tablets very casually, saying, "I think I'll be a king next time. This looks like fun." Or, "Next time I'm going to be a tremendous warrior. I'll be a hero. I'm taking this life." They chose them very casually, a lot of laughter. The people who'd come out from hell, and both parties were the same, they spent 1,000 years in those places. The people from hell were very, very careful. They picked up the life. They'd done this before, of course, they realized. They picked up this life, they examined it. One of the great, Odysseus, for example, the great Greek hero, he was picking up tablets. He was there. He was picking up tablets, and he just didn't want any more trouble. The previous existence, he spent his whole life fighting, leaving behind his wife, leaving his son behind in Greece while he went off to the Trojan Wars for 10 or 20 years. He was tired of it. He was tired of it. He didn't want to be a hero anymore. He was the greatest Greek hero. He'd done that. He was over it. He didn't want any more trouble. What he found in the corner of the field, the far distant corner of the field, was the life of an ordinary man. Just an ordinary man who was going to have the potential for getting married, a potential for a family, a normal everyday job on the farm or whatever it was. Odysseus chose that for his next life. So what they're saying, which the New Age movement picked up on many, many years ago, they picked up on half of the information, is that these people are choosing their own lives. But the interesting thing is that the life is not predetermined, meaning that you have this existence, you can choose to be a king, but whether you're a good king or a bad king is entirely up to you. You still have the responsibility of fulfilling that life in a decent way or a degraded way. That's up to you. Okay? So, was told not to pick a life. He was told not to take a life, but just to observe what was happening, because they told him he was going back to earth as he was. He was going to be reborn, because the fates, the goddesses, wanted the people of the earth to know what was actually happening, so they would consider their lives more carefully. So he had to follow the same procedure as all the rest. Once they'd chosen the life, whatever it was, a warrior, a soldier, a duck, a swan, whatever they chose it to be, what was then known as a daemon, I believe the word was coined by Socrates, a daemon, some people pronounce it a daimon, joins your soul. And the reason it joins your soul is because it has a purpose and a function, something that it wishes to contribute to the earth. It joins your soul for that reason. That night, they're transported across a river and then across what is known as the plains of Lethe, L-E-T-H-E, which is the plains of forgetting. And then they were borne out onto the earth's plane. The plains of Lethe, once having crossed that, you forget everything that's gone before. You forget about the goddesses, you forget about choosing your existence, you forget about the daemon, you lose everything, and you're just simply born out into the earth, into a family. Okay? Not remembering anything of what's gone before. The interesting point is that the daemon chooses the family into which you are to be born, knowing what will happen to you in that family. When I first heard that concept from the New Age movement, you choose your own parents, Prince Charles is famous for having stated that at one time. He'd obviously been reading the myth of or possibly the Hindu Upanishads, which repeat the same myth, or a very similar myth, that we choose our own parents. The New Age movement, on about it for years, but what they did not say is that the daemon chooses the family into which we are born, knowing what will happen to us in that family. It used to anger me because choosing my family, I was brought up in an Irish Catholic alcoholic family. Father's highly abusive, very violent. It was a crazy household. I used to think, why would I choose a family like this? It made me like brain dead before I was born. Who would choose a family like that? You don't choose it. Apparently the daemon chooses it. This is a myth. But you've got to remember that the myths hold the combined wisdom of the human race. There's a meaning behind the myths. The daemon chooses the family, knowing what will happen to us, and it is in surviving that family, or enduring that family, or possibly you're spoiled rotten in the family, but in that family you are being moulded and shaped for the purpose and destiny of your life. And the daemon puts you in there because in living in that family, particularly a family like mine, which was quite abusive, highly aggressive, a lot of violence, a lot of drinking, what you really get to see, what actually happens to you in surviving those situations, you are developing skills and gifts and talents that will enable the daemon to fulfill its function on earth. That is the myth of earth. We are prepared in our family, no matter how abusive or no matter how wonderful, we are prepared in the family of origin for the meaning and purpose of our lives. which means not only do you have a calling, not only is there a meaning and a purpose to your life, you also have the gifts necessary to fulfill your calling.